So I'm Emma Wright. I'm probably here in my capacity as chair of the Professional Development Committee, but I'm also co-chief executive of AFA, and I'm joined by Jane. I'll let Jane introduce herself.
Hi, yeah, I'm Jane. So I'm the other half of the co-chief executive of AFA with Emma, and I also am part of the professional development committee, assessing all your registrations.
Okay, so we usually run the workshop towards the end of the month. There's a sort of a bit of a surgery, a bit of a question and answer session for anybody who's got anything particular that they want to pick up around the registration process. But we often find that people would like a quick run through of the process itself as well before we get into the questions. So I'll just run through some slides with a bit of an overview, because conscious there'll probably be a mix of people who are partway through their application and a mix of people who are just starting. So the route to professional registration for analysts and data professionals is through the Federation of Informatics Professionals, FedIP. So that's an umbrella organisation that covers a number of other membership bodies that represent professions in health records management, within IT, within change management. So quite a broad spectrum of people working under the sort of broader informatics and DDAT umbrella. So FedIP isn't a membership organisation. So AFA is part of that FedIP family. And what FedIP do is hold that public register of people who are professionally registered, and they license us as AFA to enable us to award professional registration to our members based on those FedIP standards. So obviously we've got that license from FedIP. We're currently the only route for analysts and for any of the data professions to become professionally registered. So as I said, FedIP have got a set of standards that people need to reach in order to gain professional registration. And at AFA, we have tailored those to meet the requirements of the analytics profession. And that is overseen by the AFA Professional Development Committee, which, as we've said, is what myself and Jane are currently working with as well. So the fact that you're all here is really great, because you're obviously interested in professional registration. It's a great opportunity to let you showcase your skills and competencies at any stage in your career. So we've got 5 professional registration standards that go right through from entry level, associate level, right up to leading practitioner. It gives you that independent validation of your skills and competencies as well. It's not aligned to academic history or any academic qualifications. It's about how you put your skills into practice within the roles that you're in, and it's a real independent sort of count mark of your competency and credibility within the profession. So in terms of our process for professional registration, you need to look at what level you'd like to apply at. And as I said, we've got the 5 levels there. The associate practitioner level, as I said, is entry level. So if you're quite early on within your existing career, that's a slightly different process to what we're going to run through this afternoon. So if you are looking at associate practitioner level, it's quite a light application process, but you're making the commitment as part of that application process to apply at a higher level over the next 2 years as you build your skills and competencies within the profession. The remaining levels, so from practitioner through to leading practitioner, is the process that we'll run through this afternoon. There's an application form to complete and at least three pieces of reflective practice, and we'll run through some examples of that. Please only use the official AFA professional registration applications. The application forms that we do have got a reflective practice template embedded in there, but we do also have some templates that are in PowerPoint that you can find on the AFA website, which some people find easier to use and navigate and move the text around on a slide rather than in a Word submission. But all the documents that you do need are on the FedIP Hub, and you can access that FedIP Hub through the AFA website. So on the AFA website itself, you'll find the professional registration page, and at the bottom there's I think it's a click here to apply button, and that will take you through to the FedIP Hub. So your landing page within the FedIP Hub will look like this, and it will ask you to select what level of registration you want to apply for. You can register with the Hub at any time, and it isn't sort of time limited. So if you're not quite there with your application for this registration round, then you can still access the Hub, register and start uploading your evidence within the Hub itself. If you've clicked to apply at, say, practitioner level, and then you get into your application and realise that actually you could probably meet the senior practitioner standards, then that's fine. Once you're registered with the Hub, all of the different application forms are available within there. So although you're asked to click on a registration level on that front screen, you can change that if need be as you go through the application process. So in terms of which level, as I said, the 4 levels that we have that are applied for through the FedIP Hub are practitioner, senior practitioner, advanced practitioner and leading practitioner. The way that the levels kind of step up through those different sectors is generally around your autonomy and your ability to select how you undertake a piece of work and what breadth that work or project then sort of covers. So as an example, at practitioner level, you might be doing a lot of sort of routine tasks. You'll have standard operating procedures that you follow. You might do some ad hoc work, but it isn't the norm. And then as you move up to senior practitioner, then you're looking at more sort of project work and tasks that you're leading on. And as you work through up to leading practitioner, then you're either looking at advanced or really complex pieces of analysis, or looking at applying strategies within your organisation, making recommendations for tools that are organisation wide. So you'll find information about which levels kind of relate to which areas of roles on our website. But generally, if you think about what sort of level of autonomy you have to carry out your work in a way that you choose, that's a good way of pitching across those levels. Okay, so once you've chosen your registration level, what we say is select some really chunky sort of pieces of work or sort of large projects that you've worked on, and start your reflective practice. So as you work through your reflective practice, you'll be mapping the work that you've done to the professional registration standards. And once you've completed your registration, your reflective practice, you'll see which standards that you haven't necessarily referenced. And if you aren't referencing all of the standards within your reflective practice, then there's opportunity then within the application form for you to provide some short commentary for each standard, maybe sort of 250, 300 words per standard, that indicates how you meet that. And then once you've completed all that, you can compile your evidence, which goes alongside your reflective practice, and submit that through to the hub. So the application form itself starts with sort of a mini CV. So it's an overview of your current role, any qualifications that you might have, what roles you've held over the last few years, anything that you've published in terms of papers or any presentations or awards that you might have received, just so you can showcase some of the things that you have done, and that just gives the assessor a bit of a flavour of where you're at, where you're working, and the sort of things that you've done. Okay, so to try and bring this to life a little bit, we've got an example here, a worked example at a senior practitioner level. So hopefully this will give you sort of more of an indication of how you can translate the work that you do into reflective practice for your professional registration application. So in this particular case, this person's an analyst working within medical specialties within the organisation. The elderly care service wants to set up a frailty service, needs some evidence that will be a good use of funding, so asks for some analytical support. You've done some research and learning around frailty, so you understand a bit more of the service that the specialty is trying to set up, and also how it's measured, how frailty is measured within healthcare. So you've had a look at what's available in terms of existing data for analysis, and then you've helped to improve the identification of frailty by adding a flag onto a system, which then enables you to identify patients with a certain level of frailty. And then you analyse what you've got that's presented in a visual way, and ultimately the output of your analysis is that the trust supports the creation of a frailty service. So hopefully there's things there that you will recognise as aligning to pieces of work that you do. So your next step is to put that into the reflective practice template. We use a STAR approach. So STAR stands for situation, tasks, actions, and results. So I don't know about you, but I'm working off a very small laptop, and this is absolutely tiny on my screen. So I'm hoping it's a bit larger for you, but we will share these slides. So we've described the situation. The analyst's being asked to join. And I am actually going to pop out this, just bear with me a second because I actually can't read it. Bear with me 2 seconds while that renders. Can everybody still see my slides?
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent, thank you. And now I can read them, but I can't see you guys anymore. Analyst was asked to join a newly established multidisciplinary frailty team, and establish a frailty service. And then you can see in the brackets in red, these are the standards that relates to. So SP7 is the senior practitioner standard for collaboration. So that's evidencing that you're collaborating and working as part of a multidisciplinary team. And then further down in the situation, it says I've attended various workshops, gained knowledge, etc. And the reference there is SP9, and standard 9 relates to continuous professional development. So there's the reference there to training and increasing knowledge. And it says after several meetings, so they've obviously come up to speed in terms of identifying frailty. They've looked at how they will present the results of their analysis, so a series of charts, as it says there. And once they've collected enough data as part of the process, then there's a plan then to move that into statistical process control charts. And there you can see in the red brackets SP1 and SP2, and standards 1 and 2 for senior practitioner relates to identifying methods and problem solving. So hopefully you start to see how you can take a piece of work or a project that you've done and start to map that out in terms of reflective practice. So what's really important is that as you're writing that reflective practice up, you're including those references to the standards. So you're signposting the assessor who's reading your reflective practice to how you believe that what you've done and the actions you've taken have met those standards. So I won't go through all of the individual pieces within the reflective practice, but hopefully you'll then see some of the tasks, so around attending meetings, writing SQL scripts, liaising with other people, and then the actions that have been taken from those tasks, and then ultimately what the results were, so what the outcomes were. So the other part of the application process is that as well as telling us what you've done and linking that to the professional registration standards, you also need to provide us with some evidence of that. So looking at this example, so at the top of the task section, it says I attended several measurement meetings. So what we'd be looking for in evidence there is either the agenda or the notes from those meetings. You might find that you're referencing some of the communication standards and how you've presented your work. So as part of your evidence, you can send us examples of presentations that you may have done or reports that you may have written. There's also elements around, seeking advice from others or working with others, and evidence for that can be as straightforward as sort of emails in between yourself and other colleagues that you may have asked for help and advice, or to review and validate the work that you've done. So there's a whole range of evidence that you can supply. What you do need to do is reference every standard, so every professional registration standard, but you can use one piece of evidence to evidence more than one standard. So what you don't need to do is have a separate piece of evidence for every piece of every standard within your reflective practice. So normally we receive sort of between 10 and 30 pieces of evidence. And as I say, they can range from snips of SQL scripts to strategy documents, to presentations, to meeting agendas, to emails, to notes of thanks or appreciation. So a whole range of different ways that you can evidence how you meet those standards. So the final part of the reflective practice is that reflective piece. So what went well as part of the work that you've done, what went less well, what you learned from that, and what you do differently next time. If you want to reference the standards within that reflection, that's absolutely fine. It isn't essential, but sometimes it does give people more opportunity to reference more standards as part of their reflective practice. So, as I said, we need a minimum of 3 pieces of reflective practice. So 3 pieces of work or things that you've worked on. They may be all sort of data or analytical tasks, or as you move up through the different levels of registration, you may find that you're submitting reflective practice around implementing new tools or having organisational wide strategies. But at the start of your application form, there is a matrix. So it lists all of the standards down the left-hand side, and then it gives you an opportunity to put a reference for the different pieces of evidence. And most people just number their evidence. So we've got on there under the standard 9 for CPD, E1, and E1 might be a certificate for a course that you've attended. So for this application, we've got the 3 different pieces of reflective practice. We've ticked where those reflective practice meets the standards, and then that lets you look and just see whether you've got any gaps where you haven't evidenced against the standard within your reflective practice, and that's fine. If you can reference as many standards as you can within your reflective practice, it's fantastic, because that makes it an easier application process. But if you are missing standards from within your reflective practice, then there is the opportunity then to pop that into a piece of commentary within your application form. So we can see here we've hit every standard with the exception of demonstrating professionalism. So then what this individual applicant then does is a piece of commentary that explains how they meet that standard, and this particular piece is in relation to the AFA code of conduct, which is our gold standard for demonstrating professionalism, and here you can see they've called out 2 elements of the code of conduct, one around respecting and recognising skills and contributions of colleagues, and the other about promoting respect for the individual and their rights. And then there's a bit of commentary there around how they believe they've met those standards. The final part of the application form that we do need some commentary on is the healthcare context standards. So these are mandatory standards from FedIP. You can reference these contextual standards, so they all begin with C. You can reference those within your reflective practice if you meet them, but you do still need to put some commentary in here, because this is about recognising that the work you do is in that health and care context, and that's part of the FedIP registration requirements. So you can see it's 2 pieces of commentary here. Again, no more than a couple of 100 words needed, just something that lets us know that you appreciate the context in which you work within that sort of health environment, and also the broader sort of informatics disciplines. So not just analytics and data, but the wider piece around maybe IT, clinical coding, etc. And then the bottom section is around information governance, confidentiality, and GDPR. So once you've completed all that, you're going back into the hub, and from there you can upload your application, your reflective practice, and your evidence. So that's a straightforward upload. So you can see here there's a submission that you can click. If you need to add any notes for your assessor to consider, then you can pop those in there. So I mentioned about providing evidence earlier, either reports that you've done or pieces of work. There are scenarios where people feel that the work they've done is either confidential to their organisation or sensitive in nature. So you can pop a note in there to explain that. And then what the assessor will do is organise a short call with you, so you can talk the assessor through that piece of work without having to send in any sort of sensitive information from the work that you've done. Obviously, at no point do we want anybody submitting anything that's patient or person identifiable. But we understand that there are still sensitivities in some of the pieces of work that some more organisations may undertake. So there is still an opportunity to use those as an example, and rather than providing the evidence directly, have that call with the assessor to talk through. So that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour of the process itself. I'm going to take my slides down. I think I've seen things pinging in the chat, so I will stop sharing and I'll let Jane pick up the chat questions first while I give my voice a rest. Let me take those slides down.
Yeah. Gary, you're allowed to breathe. Unfortunately, my emojis don't work for some reason. I can't see the slides. I can't use my emojis, so I would have given you the thumbs up otherwise. Stella, yes, you can use the PowerPoint template if that's easier for you. Whether you then choose to, copy and paste it into the application is choice, or just send the PowerPoint presentation with the application. Now, Emma, you can probably help out with this one. Sorry about your voice. Ibrahim has asked, you'd like to confirm whether the project requirement is limited to analysis only, or if a data science project would also be considered valid for registration. So I don't know whether you want to talk around the data science element.
Yeah. So I think probably a couple of years ago, the standards were very much driven towards analysts and analytical pieces of work. We did a review of the standards and relaunched them. So they should now apply right across analytics, data science, and sort of data warehousing and data engineering roles. So absolutely, you should be able to apply those standards to any sort of data science project, and that should be easier to do now than it has been. So the route around kind of walking through those standards would be, what was the problem you were trying to solve with your project? What was the methodologies you've used? Did you work with other people? What was your level of autonomy and responsibility within that? How did you communicate the outputs of those projects? What did you learn along the way? Did you do any extra pieces of training or sort of skills improvement as part of those work, that piece of work? How did you organize it? So all of those different elements of the standards you should be able to apply right across the sort of data and analytics professions. So hopefully that answers your question. But we've had successful professional registration applications from both data scientists and from the data engineering professions as well.
Right. So, Stella, for evidence while naming the file, can we put a description in front of the evidence? Oh, my screen suddenly skipped up there, e.g. E1 acknowledgement email. Yes, I mean, as long as it using the matrix, we just want to be able to see. So where you've said in reflective practice 1, I hit standard SP1, and I've evidenced, this through evidence E4. If you want to call it E4 acknowledgement email, then that's fine. It just makes it easier for you to see where the gaps are and what you've evidenced, and it makes it easier for us to follow. And actually, when you're saving them down, I always suggest opening up a folder in your in your computer and just keep saving things in there, you might want to call them something as you're saving them, so you don't have to keep opening them yourself to find out what it is you've saved, especially if you are using the same bit of evidence for for two standards. So, for example, collaboration and communication, it might be a multidisciplinary team meeting, minutes showing that you've, spoken or presented some figures. You're covering both the collaboration and the communication there. And if you've saved it down yourself as MDT minutes, then, great. So yes, that's not a problem. Call it. It's just that, it's an easier format to follow. If you have two pieces of work that hit all the competencies, can you submit just two reflective practice? We do require three, just to give us a much broader picture of what it is you do. And you've also asked about the word count. So actually, most of our reflective practice are people manage to keep it within the page. They're not, if you do it by bullets, it's quite easy to write down, and it's not as laborious as writing loads and loads of text. But you might find a reflective practice like the one in the example that Emma gave, where all the boxes are filled up to the max. If you've covered all your competencies, your third reflective practice might be just a little one. They don't all have to be massive projects, massive pieces of work, or massive amount of information, just as long as we want a good amount, obviously. So for one or two, we're expecting to see a good amount of context in there. But if you're, pushing in a third one and everything's covered, then you don't have to go so big on that third one, but we do require that. So there's no word count limit, but it shouldn't have to be very big.
Yeah. So that example that I had up on screen, each box was about 200, 250 words. So that'll give you a bit of an indication.
What would be some good examples of evidence to support the professionalization, I even say it, professionalism standards, so code of conduct? It might be things like you've attended an equality and diversity workshop or something like that, or whether you're showing that you are acknowledging others within your team and their input. It might be that you've done some training for them or helped support them. So if there's anything on that, any other suggestions there, Emma?
Yeah, so there's also within the code of conduct about not operating outside of your skill set. So it may be that you've got to a point and gone, I'm not sure I can safely take this any further with my skills. So you're seeking help and advice from others. So that's also a useful way of sort of showing how you comply against that code of conduct. The code of conduct's there. Yeah, the code of conduct's on the AFA website. But yeah, supporting others and providing training for people as Jane said, and keeping your skills and competencies up to date, which kind of links into the CPD standard. So you might be able to use a single piece of evidence over both pieces, over both standards there.
Okay.
Thank you. That's really good examples.
No problem.
Quim, I hope I said that right. So, your workforce development manager for the BI Directorate, how do you start to look at this in conjunction with NCF?
Yeah.
The NCF National Competency Framework, AFA was actually commissioned by NHSE to create that framework. So you will see a lot of similarities between the framework and the standards, but the standards for your registration park the NCF. The NCF is, I'll use Emma's analogy that she often uses. The NCF is like, these are the tools you need to work your way through up in the profession to these various grades, and it shows you all the things you need to do. The professional registration application is showing that you're competent at using the tools in that toolbox. So the NCF, as I say, park it to one side. That's what you're using to look at your development and your career progression, where you want to go. But the registration process is about what you are, what your skills are now, how can you evidence what you're doing now in your current role, or if you're in a new role, it might be your previous role, as long as the evidence is, you know, fairly recent. Although there are things like, you know, if you've written a business case, it's done once every 3 years, then we're not going to ask for something that's only a year old, because we get that. But on the whole, you know, recent work, recent evidence of your skills and your competencies now, regardless of what the NCF might say about your job and your grade. Does that answer your question? Hopefully. I'll just quickly go on to Ibrahim. You say you receive emails as a member, but not unsure of your current registration level. I don't know if Lizzie is still on the call or whether she's doing the recording, but we will ask her to check that, because you're saying you're not sure your name appears. She can go back and check and see where we are.
So professional registration is very different to membership of AFA. So you can be an AFA member and not necessarily be professionally registered. Obviously, it's ideal to have all of our members professionally registered at some level. So if you don't think you've been through this process, Ibrahim, then that's why your name isn't on the published register.
So Gary, for SQL and other scripts, do we need to add some explanation? We use a lot of local functions, which might not be obvious to an assessor. If you've, you know, said in your reflective practice what the script is for, and we know what the task is in hand, by showing us a snippet of that SQL script, it just gives us an understanding that you know, you understand SQL and where to use it to find out the answers you need for the task you've been given. So I wouldn't worry about going into loads of detail about local functions and everything. It's really just to back up what you've said in your reflective practice, that I was asked to do this, so I wrote a SQL script because that was the best way to get the data out of the system, and here it is. So you don't need to then start describing each of the functions there. Oh, I can see a thumbs up. Right, okay. Oh, and then Abraham's, yeah, Lizzie's answered there saying, yeah, you haven't been through the professional registration yet. So as Emma says, membership is one thing. You have all the benefits of the membership, the newsletters and the branch meetings and the lunch and learns and the annual conferences, etc. But professional registration is something aside that you choose to do to further develop your career, and that then puts you onto the professional register. And ultimately, things like professional registrations more and more going to be asked for on job descriptions. So very worthwhile, because all our finance and clinical colleagues have to do this to be able to, you know, to work. So we're trying to aim for the same sort of professionalisation for our analysts. Any other questions?
Don't see any more hands.
No.
No. Oh,
Gary?
Just very quickly, you've probably said already, when is the final deadline for this round?
So it's the end of April, so it's the 30th, which I think is next
Wednesday.
So Yeah, and then in terms of timescales, we'll close the window on the 30th of April. The applications will go to the AFA Professional Development Committee in May to be assigned to an assessor, and they will come back to the June Professional Development Committee for outcomes. So if you've got a straightforward application, then you should be looking to hear by the end of June at the latest in terms of your outcome. It's a very supportive process, so if we get your application and it's not quite there on some of the standards, then we will reach out to you. We will suggest either other bits of evidence or the things that you can use to strengthen that, and we will keep your application live while you provide that. That obviously might take us a little bit longer, so you might fall out of that sort of 2-month window in terms of hearing. But what we try to do is get everybody's application over the line by hook or by crook, and we often have calls with people where, you know, we can see the evidence, but we just need a little bit more information, so we can come back to you around that. So it's also just worth mentioning, because we hadn't as part of the wider presentation, that depending on the level that you're applying for, you have to meet all of the standards at that level. So if you're looking at senior practitioner and you meet, say, 8 out of the 9 standards for senior practitioner, then you can't apply at that level. You must meet every standard. So you'd need to be looking at practitioner level. So just make sure that you are hitting all of the standards at the level that that your application's for. We do get applications where we look at them and go, you've pitched this too low, and actually you could have moved this up a level, and we will have that conversation with you. So as I said, it's very supportive, and you know, the assessors are keen to get as many data and analytics professions on that register as we can.
Right. Ibrahim, attendance at conferences, tech events, training, CPD, count towards professional standards. Absolutely. One of your professional standards there is continued professional development, standard 9. So, you know, any training certificates, CPD certificates, even you know, an Eventbrite ticket confirming that you are attending a webinar, anything that shows that you are attending or participating in an event, a webinar, training that is boosting your professional development, then yes, absolutely, those count. And as Emma said, in the demonstrating professionalism, when she suggested that you realise that you might not be able to carry on with a piece of work that's a little bit above your skill set, so you decide to go on a Tableau training course to help with your final output, you're demonstrating both professionalism as in recognising your competencies, and then producing a certificate to say, and this is what I did about it. So that then also demonstrates continued professional development.
Okay. Any more before we close the session? We'll get the slides and the recording up onto the website as well. I think that looks like it. So hopefully that's been helpful. We look forward to receiving all of your applications, and have a good afternoon. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.